Welcome. This is For Better and Worth,
the podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young. And we're so glad you joined us today.
All right, y'all, come on. Let's get into it. Hello, folks. Here we are back again.
Yes, welcome. We're so glad to be here.
So glad to be able to get back in the studio and get on to this next thing. We've been talking about the kids and, we've talked about celebrations, but I think it's time to really get to some of those hard topics today.
Yeah, I think sometimes we want to talk about all the good stuff, keep a smile on our face. And I think we'll do that again today. But the truth of the matter is that marriage is challenging. Marriage is hard. And sometimes marriage is spelled W-O-R-K, right?
Look, I agree with that because just as much as, marriage has a lot of good, there's a lot of things that you have to learn to work through. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what we call dust-ups.
Yes. So let's back up a little bit and give some context. We talk about couples and money, relationships and money, and discussing these things. And one of the things that happens for a lot of people is they'll have what many people term money fights, arguments, etc. People will have challenges discussing anything, communication, the time they spend together, who does what in terms of chores, and there's a lot, honestly, that you could fight about, right? So let's talk about that fight, that argument, or whatever it is you want to call it. We call it what, honey?
We call it dust-ups.
Yes.
And, it's I don't know, as I sit here and listen and I think about the past 25 years, and there's been a lot of great moments during that time. And I can go back and I can probably pinpoint moments that were, challenging or, when we had dust-ups and, what it took to get through those moments. And I think that's why we want to just, be authentic and real with the people that are out there listening because, look, we're not telling you anything that we haven't been through ourselves. And sometimes you got to have that mirror that you can reflect back on and look at what you've been through and share that with others to try and help prevent some of the things that they go through. Because marriage in and of itself is hard enough, and it consists of compromise and communication and all of those things. But you really have to employ a lot to make sure that you keep moving on the same page and at the same pace.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already said dust up a couple of times. And so I want to describe it. I actually was talking to our daughter the other day and I shared that concept, like why we call a disagreement or what some might think is an argument a dust up. So I think personally, and I don't know if you agree, honey, but I don't feel like we've actually had a real argument. Like I definitely know we don't fight, right? But I wouldn't consider what we go through when we aren't in agreement or we don't see eye to eye as literally an argument or a fight. I think it's a dust up because when you consider when someone kicks the dust up, literally, there are these small particles that get everywhere. And honestly, it's kind of hard to see through it, right? And then it settles down. And you're kind of okay after that. And I consider it a dust up because that's what it is. Like in the moment, it's hard to see clearly and it's annoying and it's frustrating. You might sneeze, right? And then at some point it settles down and you can kind of move forward without any blinders on. And that's why I think a dust up is a great term for what we go through because it's not something that lasts a long time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I won't say in 25 years we haven't had any arguments.
Maybe I'm being optimistic.
Yeah, I think, trying to be real with people, 25 years, there's going to be some time when, we've had arguments. But, I agree that we don't fight because, I don't want to jump ahead. But, Fighting, that's a whole different thing. But I really think people get to this point because there are issues with communicating, or they can't express what the problem is that they're experiencing, and I know since COVID, people have spent a lot of time together.
Yes, Lord.
They have been in the house where, previously, someone or both people may have been going to respective workplaces, and for seasons, people have been working from home in different rooms, and it's like, man, you're looking at the same person all day, every day. It's like, ooh, something is bound to happen. And then we factor in money and, debt and paying bills and talking about all the things that need to happen. I mean, it becomes a lot to bear. So I think that's where a lot of these things can stem from.
Yeah. And I would agree that life gets complicated. The longer you live, the more your family expands, the more responsibility you hold, the more challenges you have to deal with at work or in any other parts of your life, your extended family. Life gets complicated and it requires more of you. And if we haven't practiced how to handle these moments, or if we don't have skills and tools to handle them, then what many people would call an argument will ensue for sure. And then people have different perspectives. I think, I don't always see things the way you see them and vice versa. And I think that presents sometimes a power struggle. I think a lot of arguments or disagreements come up because somebody believes they're right. Would you agree? Like, come on now. We can agree on this. We can
Look,
agree on
look,
this.
look, people always want to be right.
Yes.
And I think we've talked about it before where sometimes it takes the more mature person to sometimes relinquish their need or desire to be right in order to move forward and move through an issue, because we know couples fight over a bunch of different things. It can be trust or sex or money or, you know, gender roles. It could be any of that stuff. It could be, how you approach raising the kids, or how you're going to do big purchases, or how you're going to get out of debt. It could be a number of different things. We could keep going on and on
There's
about what you fight over, but I think the more important thing is how you get through those dust ups, or, if people call those arguments, how you, navigate through that.
Yeah, I think there's no short of issues to have a disagreement over. So I feel like I'm going to interchangeably say argument, disagreement, dust up.
It's all one and the same.
It's all
It's
one
the
and the
same
same.
thing.
But I feel like stress can amplify and make things bigger for sure. And it's really good. I think one practice, if we can get very clear on from the start, that is helpful, is to discuss certain recurring things like monthly bill paying and all of that kind of stuff. Discuss it when things are going well. Don't bring up hard topics when something else is, hitting the fan, right? let's bring up some of the challenging topics when you are in a good mood, or when something good has happened and you're like, all right, you know what, this might be a good time. And I think one of the things that it has been good for us is to ask, is now a good time?
Yeah.
That's a really good question, just to level set and say, hey, it's now a good time to discuss blah blah blah. And if it isn't, let's find out when is a good time, because that will reduce tension, because you're now making space for the other person to really have, their foot in the door to have a good conversation, versus nope, this isn't a good time, and you walk through the door anyway.
Yeah, I think timing can be essential, and timing, like they say, is everything, because if someone's already in a heightened state and you bring something tough, people can feel like you're attacking them or you're being insensitive to what they're feeling. So timing is very important and it's essential. But I think we were having a conversation not too long ago, and we were talking about, and I think you said to me, like, it's best if you just, say what you're feeling in the moment.
You
Because
believe that, and it's so hard in practice,
it
okay?
is. It's very hard. And when you said it to me, I was like, man, I got to work on that, because sometimes in the moment, and it's okay to pause and gather your thoughts and, maybe circle back. But sometimes in the moment, it's easier to address because 9 times out of 10, something has been misconstrued or it's been mistaken or out of context. Like I could say something and you're like, well, man, why'd you say that? Or, and then I'm able to interpret, oh, well, I didn't mean it this way, or I could apologize and then just diffuse it. But like you said, it's hard to, in the moment when you get offended, to say, well hold on now. Wait a minute.
Right.
Is she talking to me?
Right.
Like, but that it's a good practice. But I'm gonna tell you, people, it takes work. It takes
does.
practice and practice and practice and practice.
I remember some years back. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but there was one moment that we had the kids, and I don't even today remember what we fought about. I don't remember what our disagreement was, but I promise you, when you came back into the room or you came back into the home, because I remember I was in the kitchen and you came in the room and I said something. We were already in a heightened state and I said something and your words were, I can't take this, forget this. And you walked out. And that is the one time where, your voice was elevated, your agitation was clear in your body language, and you were not about to have this conversation so you left, right? Like that, those types of things don't happen as much for sure. And the craziest thing is you were very upset. And I don't even remember what we were fighting about. I don't even remember what the argument or disagreement was about. Like, and that probably wasn't a dust up. Like, that was an argument.
Look, that's why I had to keep it real with the people. Like 25 years, there's been some argument.
Yeah,
okay?
Something's happened, right? Something's happened. And so we're not without having had those moments. But I think that the looking back, it was so vital in that moment. And today I can't even remember what it was.
And I think that's the good thing is like things in hindsight, they say it's 20/20, but I say it's 100 because it is so clear. Like when you've moved past a point of injury and you've allowed healing to occur, you can almost sometimes not remember the injury unless it's, something's intense that occurred. You remember it, but I think that's, they say time heals all wounds. And the fact that we can't even remember what it was about at this point, clearly that has been healed. And I think there's opportunity no matter what it is that comes up, no matter how big or how small, you can navigate and move through things, but you got to be willing to do it.
Both parties have to be willing. So you mentioned something that I thought was so good. And I just want you to speak into this statement you said. You said fighting is not fair. And I tell you, like, everything in me was like, that's it. So I just want you to, like, what does that mean? What does it mean that fighting is not fair? And how does that affect relationships?
Look, I think people know that we're from Detroit. I grew up on the east side of Detroit, and I had my first fight when I was in 3rd grade.
Now, let's be clear. You were the fighter. I'm the lover. I have never been one to fight. I probably had one in particular in my entire upbringing that I can remember.
True.
So let's be clear. This is your side husband.
Yeah. I've definitely, in my time growing up, had my fair share of fights from 3rd grade all the way up through probably college.
Come on, wait a minute.
Fights.
Have you had your fair share of wins? Let's talk about that.
Look, we're not taking L's over here.
Come on.
I didn't been hit before, but I say fighting isn't fair because the bottom line in a fight is you fight to win. And when you're fighting, I say you'll use anything at your disposal to win. You talking about street fighting, whatever is available. If it's a bottle, a brick, a stick, a pipe.
And nowadays, a daggone chair, right? A daggone chair.
Stop it.
Come on now. We have turned the tables and picked up the chairs to fight people nowadays.
No, you didn't. But the point is, you'll use anything that's available to you. And so it really doesn't become fair. And you really are trying to inflict the most harm and the most damage, and you're trying to receive the least amount. And so when you think about fighting and when couples get into fights, if you took the definition or the context that I just laid out, that you're fighting to win, you're trying to deliver the most damage, you're trying to take the least damage, you're trying to use anything available to you, fighting wouldn't be fair. And it's almost important for couples to set ground rules.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, let's not hit below the belt, or let's not go to this extreme. Because sometimes, there's some things it's very hard to come back from.
Yeah.
You say something or you do something and you're trying to win a fight at all costs. I mean, you can cause irreparable damage. And so I feel like we have never fought, hit below the belt. And, we really had, it's weird to say. It's almost like, okay, we're going to be professional boxers and this is a ring and there are rules to engagement versus a street fighter that is just going all out. And these are crazy examples to utilize, but think about people when they get in situations and they're like, oh, you're not going to hurt me. I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. And then they have caused damage that they can't come back from.
Yeah, that's so good. Because the thing is, we don't want to inflict pain on our spouse, our partner, the one that we want to spend our time with all the time. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, when you look at it, this is the person that you have pledged to to be with for life. It's, if you're married, and that is a huge responsibility. It's weighty, and I never want to say something that in the moment, one, I can't get back, and it inflicts irreparable damage that 25 years later, 30 years later, you'll remember. That just seems like counterintuitive to what in the beginning, we had committed to. And the truth of the matter is, you my ride or die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we will go to bat for one another. We don't want anybody to come into this union and say or do something that is hurtful to the other. But then when we turn the tables and we say, hold on a second, he said something I didn't like, or she said something I didn't like, and now we're against one another. That's counter to what we really want. I mean, if I'm gonna fight for you on on your behalf to somebody else, how am I gonna turn that around and you're my enemy? You're not my enemy. We're on the same team.
You just took the words out of my mouth because that's right where I was going. And you say it often. And, I remind us sometimes, same team. Same team. You can't be on a team. And, I play team sports and, you were a cheerleader. And so I know you don't want to fight with your team because that's the people that you have to go into battle with or you have to go out into the world with. And so in a marriage relationship, you have to remember we're on the same team. We want the same things. We want the same goals. And I know there's times that people are paired and matched together and it might be a mismatch. It might be incompatibility that causes you to fight more or have more dust ups. And that's something that you have to deal with if it's true incompatibility or if there's abuse, like physical abuse going on in relationships. You have to consider those things. And we're not saying, just stay in those situations. But I feel like barring anything outside of that, you can work it out. It may not be easy. It would be difficult, but I believe you could work it out.
Absolutely. And our disclaimer here, of course, is when we say the word fight, we literally are not meaning physical
Right.
with your partner. But we tend to diminish the impact of our words. Our words can be daggers. They can slice.
You can definitely fight with words.
Absolutely. And they can be just as painful. And a lot of times we do not see it that way. So I'm going to give an example. And this is something that I don't say to you and you haven't said to me, but it's just an example of how words can cut, right? So when people are talking about, the money management, etc., somebody might say, you never do this right. that kind of stuff is hurtful because never is so finite,
Yeah.
right? Or you're never going to get this right, or you always do blah blah blah. So these big sweeping generalizations are really difficult to swallow. And then name calling, obviously. And when you mentioned hitting below the belt, to me this is just, you know where people hurt most,
You
right?
know they're sensitive
You
areas.
know the areas that are very tender, and
Yep.
there are places you just don't go and you just don't touch. And I think it is fair to say, when you're not in any arguments, when you're having a good time, when life is good, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I'm realizing this is a tender place for me right now, right? So let's not go here.
Yeah.
This is a place you can't go right
Start
now.
setting those ground rules when you're
Yeah.
in good moments.
Yes, and start realizing when it is that those things tend to come up for you. Because just here recently, there have been a couple of places where I'm like, babe, you know what? I just can't handle that right now. Honestly, this moment, I can't handle it right now. And so there are some jokes that can be made, and other jokes we are going to pause on for this season that we're
Right,
in.
right.
And I think that that's important.
I'm a joker. I know. I'm a jokester. My apologies sometimes.
But you know what? Honestly, the thing about you, I know when you are in a good mood, when you are joking. It's just that when you were coming up, you were the kid who everybody said, Chris, you play too much. Okay.
Look,
And
that was me, my brother and sisters, and our family. We just play too much. We joke a lot.
y'all got a lot of jokes. And honestly, there have been times when I'm in the room with your whole family and I'm sitting there still like, don't y'all start talking about me. Y'all play the dozens like y'all created the dozens.
You
Okay.
looking like don't make eye contact.
Don't make eye contact. I'm sitting here. I'm just an in-law. I'm just an in-law. I'm not blood. I'm not blood. And that's,
You so funny.
I have had those moments, and I love your family, and I have really learned how to embrace that as love, because most of the time it is not meant with malice.
Yeah,
It is meant
that's
to
the big thing.
enjoy. It's meant, but there have been times where I have had sensitive moments or times where I'm like, all right, we can't go here right now, and you have said, got it, understood, and you appreciated me saying something, because if you said a joke that turned into something that was hurtful to me.
Yeah, it would hurt me too. It would hurt my
Exactly.
feelings. Because I'm not seeking to hurt you.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, it makes me think about how, like, somebody who's listening is like, man, we're on the same team, we're on the same page, but we seem to just be getting into it more. And I think you really have to get back to the nature of thinking that that person has your best intentions at heart. And I know we've talked about that. It's like, I'm not trying to hurt you. I got your best intentions at heart. We're on the same team, and we're trying to work through this thing. But even with all of that, we're entering a different phase in life. We're recent empty nesters, and our youngest is getting further along in college, so it's like getting closer and closer to like being complete empty nesters. And why do you think that some of these dust ups are coming up now for us more than before?
Honestly, we spend a lot of time together. We work from home, both of us, and that can be a lot when it's all day and then all night. And then typically when our daughter's not here, that's even more one-on-one time. So while that can be good, it also presents, you are a person who likes quality time, and I don't have that need. That's not my love language. And so I think sometimes I need more time to myself, or I could do more time to myself, and you need more individualized time, and you want to talk. You enjoy that. And so I have to get outside of myself in order to meet the need that you have, and it might be the same for you, but I think that can also present some more, dust ups, if you will, because it's like we don't
Because
need the same
we spent,
stuff.
yeah, we have different needs, and we're spending a lot of time
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, because when you spend time with people, you start to see their faults or their frailties, or something that's not even a big deal, you see it more often just because you're there all the time.
Yes.
Whereas when you travel, I'm not seeing, when you do stuff or say stuff that could be an annoyance to me. I'm not seeing any of that. But when you're here and we're here literally all day into the night, it's like, okay, I done seen this 3 times already today. And so you just start thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot. So I think that is a part of it, and adjusting to that timing. And I also think we change. I think that, I- I'm probably not the same woman I was years ago. And I think that the same goes for you. And so there's that part as well.
Yeah, that's a big one right there for me is that people change over time and you have to almost like learn new things about people because like I said, we're entering a different phase. And the phase in life where we were focused on raising kids and they took a whole lot of our time and attention is over and we're like as individuals evolving and I don't know if I've come to just this awakening, about life and trying to enjoy life and not take things for granted and really just becoming someone slightly different than I was 25 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago,
I mean, that's a
5 years
lot. That's
ago.
a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
time.
right. And I feel like if you aren't evolving or changing, then it's the same. And that could create some problem or angst or animosity because you don't sometimes see like, I don't know, I won't call it development, but just, maturity over time. And so I think that can play into it. And so as people are listening, I really think it's important to just sometimes take a step back and think about how you have evolved or you have changed and what your requirements are now.
Hmm.
Because like we talked about quality time and I know for you it's like acts of service and we're talking about the five love languages, but like service is what you want from me.
Hmm.
And it's like I have to think about, okay, this isn't something that I may want to do, but this is what she's requiring or what she needs in order for me to meet that need. So then I have to step into, not doing what I may like, but doing something that I know that you will like and appreciate. And then you begin to reciprocate as well because you're thinking about, well, what does he like and need? It may not be a need for you, but
Yeah.
then you reciprocate that.
Yeah.
And that's where people tend to go wrong because they're like, well, look, you should know what I need and just do it.
Yeah.
And there's not always reciprocal natures within that relationship.
I think that's good. I feel like it's interesting that you bring that up because one thing that I have really tried to learn to do is ask what you need, or like I said earlier, is now a good time? We have to really be more cognizant and aware of what is needful and ask for that, right? So we need to say, here's what I need today, or can you help me with this? Something as small as last night, for instance, when I'm downstairs, it's 10 o'clock at night, or whenever it was, and you said, hey, can you put the clothes in the dryer? I was like, dude, I do not feel like doing this. Literally.
And that's crazy. It's something so simple.
That's why it's a dust up, right? If I were to have allowed that to continue, that could have been a dust up. But I said, you know what? That's fine. And then this morning when I was like, can you feed the dog? That would be helpful, you know, and you said, okay, sure. Again, these small things is what can come up, and if not tended to well or properly, can lead to something else. Because what if I was like, nah, you were doing the laundry, you finished that junk. you
Right. And if
know
I was like, nah, that's your dog.
Right. Exactly. I mean, literally, that's what could have happened. And then it would have dusted up stuff that was completely unnecessary. So, diffusing and just being the type of person who was like, you know what? Hey, this is something small that I could do to help him, or this is something small I could do to help her. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I realized between you and I is that we really didn't see parents have healthy disagreements because we both were raised in single parent households.
That's true.
And so I think we had to figure out what it looks like to have a healthy disagreement, right? That it's okay to not agree on everything, and And then what do you do when it remains like that? Because I think part of the dust up moment is that somebody, if not both parties, believes they're right about something, or a need isn't getting met, and we feel like they're the ones who need to meet that need in the way we want them to meet it. They can do it however they want to, but we want them to do it our way. And so we haven't had the example in front of us of a healthy disagreement in the house. And so we had to figure out what that looks like for us. And that has been the part of our journey is knowing how can we disagree in a healthy way and still be communicating, I love you, I care for you, we are on the same team, because that is a muscle we've had to develop over time.
Right, right, man. As I listen to you say this, this feels like mathematics. This feels like calculus somewhat
Wow.
because it's a complex formula
Sure.
that isn't always the same input or output. And you really have to be mindful about how you approach it, because it's funny you talked about, like, putting the clothes in the dryer and feeding the dog, because I know that, like, that was a great example, because this morning I knew you weren't feeling your 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty much at a point where I was, ready, and I wasn't doing much. And you said that, and I was like, oh, yeah, let me go do this, because you usually feed the dog. And I was like, oh, she's telling me that this will be helpful to her if I just took this and did this, so you could go ahead, get ready, because we were trying to go to church, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, that's no big deal. So he's already taken care of, situated, so then we can keep moving.
Yeah.
And I think if people just will take a moment and say, well, I'm doing something right now. No, I'll get to it. And think about the other person. I think that's how you begin to handle it. And that's how you just kind of keep moving forward, is when you're thinking about the needs of the other person. If you're taking into account and consideration, almost sometimes beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
what that person needs. And then, like you said, check in with them.
Yeah.
Because when you said it's now a good time, what that says to me is you're just checking in
Mm-hmm.
with them to see, okay, where you at? Is this a good time to talk about this? Or checking in a manner to say, well, hey, is everything good? Is there something on your mind? And I think check-ins are important. And so I think those are some of the things that you have to do so you don't stay stuck.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think if we commit and commit to remind ourselves that we are on the same team. I'm for you, not against you, and I got your back. If we have that posture, then we start to let go of our needs as being the primary, right? And I think that's a good segue into how do we make it worth it, because I really feel like for me, I'm making it worth it because the dust ups, I know they're gonna come, but I'm down with you. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to fight with you, not against you, right? I want to make sure that it's you and I against the world. And if I can remember that in the heat of these tiny moments or the small moments or even the larger ones, like I'm committed to us more than I'm committed to my own agenda. And so if I can just reduce the selfishness and increase our togetherness, that is for me what makes all of it worth it, because I'm not going anywhere. So I don't even know why, you know, we would allow a dust up to creep in and to become something bigger. We're not trying to have no dust storm. Okay. We just trying to let the dust settle and keep it moving forward. And I think that just reminding, myself that our relationship and our commitment to one another is more important than whatever this little tiny issue is.
That's awesome. I appreciate that.
Come on, husband.
That was really good. That hit me right here in the center of the left
Yes.
side of my
It's
chest.
true. It's true.
And
It's
so when
true.
I think about make it worth it, I really try to consider you before myself. And I've always tried to be a provider, and I always try to solve your problems, which you don't always want them solved, but I really think that the one way you can make it worth it is to consider your partner. consider their needs and put their needs above your own sometime. I'm not saying to neglect yourself or anything like that, but relationships can tend to be a selfish endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remove the selfishness and become selfless, and it's more selflessness, then I think that is a good way to make it worth it, because you're not always and only thinking about you.
Yeah.
You're thinking about the other person and us and we. And I think that begins to make a very big difference.
Yeah, that's huge. I can get down with that. That's awesome. So we don't want to fight fair. I just honestly don't want to get to the point where we fighting. You know what I mean? So let's figure out how we can commit to that, and figure out how that looks for you as you're pondering this. Listening to this podcast, but I hope that this has been helpful, because this is what we're here to do. We're all about making sure that there's no barriers to you being successful in your relationship and with your money.
So keep pressing the play button and listen to it. And until next time,
We're out.
thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up for our email on forbetterandworth.com.
Till next time, we're out of here.